In August of 2013, a 19-year-old college student spoke calmly with his parents on the phone. He told them he was on his way home. There was nothing unusual in his tone, nothing that suggested urgency or distress. But instead of driving across the country as planned, Bryce Laspisa stopped his car in a small California town and stayed there for more than 13 hours. Days later, his vehicle would be found wrecked at the bottom of a ravine. Bryce Laspisa was never seen again. More than a decade later, his disappearance remains one of the most puzzling unsolved cases in the United States. Bryce David Laspisa was born in 1994 and raised in Illinois by his parents, Michael and Karen Laspisa. He was described as intelligent, polite, and deeply loved. Bryce maintained a close relationship with his parents and stayed in frequent contact with them, even after leaving home for college. In 2012, he moved to California to attend Sierra College in Rockland, just outside Sacramento. It was his first experience living far from home, and at first, everything appeared to be going well. Over time, however, subtle changes began to emerge. Friends later said that Bryce had started drinking heavily and seemed more withdrawn than usual. His communication became less frequent, and those closest to him noticed that he wasn't acting like himself. His parents sensed that something was wrong, but nothing about Bryce's behavior suggested that he was about to vanish without a trace. On August 28, 2013, Bryce packed his belongings into his white 2003 Toyota Highlander and began what should have been a straightforward drive from Northern California to his parent home in Illinois. The trip would normally take a little over a day, but Bryce never made it out of California. Instead, he stopped in the small town of Buttonwillow, located in Kern County, and then, inexplicably, he stayed there. For more than 13 hours, Bryce remained parked in the same location. He made phone calls. He sent text messages. He did not continue his journey. Growing increasingly concerned, his parents contacted roadside assistance and later reached out to local law enforcement, asking for a welfare check on their son. A Kern County Sheriff's deputy arrived and spoke with Bryce. According to the officer's report, Bryce appeared calm, coherent, and not under the influence of drugs or alcohol. He told the deputy that he was simply tired and planned to continue driving soon. With no legal ground to detain him, the officer left. Bryce remained in his car. This moment would later become one of the most scrutinized decisions in the entire case. Throughout the night and into the following morning, Bryce stayed in contact with his parents. His tone remained calm and controlled, almost attached. At one point, Bryce told his mother something that would haunt her in the years to come. He said, "I'll see you soon." But his actions continued to contradict his words. When Bryce finally began driving again, he did not head east toward Illinois. Instead, he drove south toward Los Angeles. Shortly after, all communication stopped. Later that day, Bryce's vehicle was discovered near Castaic Lake, just north of Los Angeles. The car had gone off the road and plunged into a ravine. The damage suggested a high-speed impact, but Bryce was not inside the vehicle. Inside the car, investigators found Bryce's wallet, cell phone, laptop, and clothing. Everything he would normally need was left behind. There were no visible signs of blood, and no clear evidence of a struggle. Search teams were immediately deployed. Helicopters scanned the lake. Dogs tracked scent trails that abruptly disappeared. Despite extensive search efforts, no trace of Bryce was found. Law enforcement officers and volunteer search teams returned to the area multiple times. Castaic Lake was searched repeatedly, and the surrounding terrain was examined by foot and by air. Still, nothing was found. Investigators were left with more questions than answers. How did Bryce disappear from an area that had been so thoroughly searched? Why would he leave behind all of his personal belongings? And why was there no physical evidence pointing to what happened next? With no definitive answers, several theories emerged over time. Some believe Bryce intentionally disappeared to start a new life. Supporters of this theory point to his withdrawn behavior and the lack of physical evidence. Others argue that leaving behind money, identification, and personal belongings makes this scenario unlikely. Another theory suggests that Bryce may have been experiencing a mental health crisis. His behavior in the days leading up to his disappearance, particularly the extended stop in Buttonwillow, raised serious concerns. However, No confirmed diagnosis was ever made public. A third theory proposes that Bryce survived the crash, but later succumbed to the environment. Yet repeated searches of the area failed to uncover any remains, and the terrain does not easily explain a complete disappearance. Over the years, alleged sightings of Bryce have been reported. None have ever been confirmed. No arrests have been made, and no remains have been recovered. The case remains officially open. More than a decade later, Bryce Laspisa is still missing. His parents continue to search for answers, and investigators continue to review the case. Somewhere between that long night in Buttonwillow and the crash near Castaic Lake, Bryce vanished, leaving behind only unanswered questions. What really happened to Bryce Laspisa? And will this case ever be solved? If you have a theory about this case, share it in the comments. And if you want to explore more cases that remain unresolved, subscribe to Unsolved Case Files, because some cases are still open. See you on the next episode.